Look, America, we need to talk. We need to talk about how you run your country, because let's be honest, it's not always going great. You have a president, a single person who is head of state, the ceremonial flag waver-in-chief who is head of government, the person actually trying to get things done. It's a lot of hats for one head, especially when that head might be, shall we say, prone to getting stuck in a jar of honey. This is called a presidential system. You've had it since the powdered wig era. It's simple, it's direct. When it grinds to a halt, it really grinds to a halt. It's like a car with one giant all-powerful wheel. If that wheel gets a flat, you're not going anywhere. Meanwhile, across the pond, the French are doing something a bit different. British system, prime minister and parliament. American system, powerful president. Pourquoi pas les deux? Why not both? The result? A semi-presidential system. Sounds like a discount aisle find, but it's a legitimate, functioning model of government. It's a hybrid, a political chimera, a governmental turducken. All right, let's break down how this French contraption actually works. The president in France is the big cheese, the head of state. They are elected by the people for a 5-year term and are responsible for the grand, sweeping stuff. Foreign policy, national defense, and generally ensuring the Constitution is respected. They are the living embodiment of the French Republic, the person who gets to stand next to other world leaders and look terribly important. The president is meant to be above the grubby fray of partisan politics, a symbol of national unity. But the president doesn't run the government alone. The president appoints the prime minister. Here's the catch. The prime minister has to have the support of the majority in the National Assembly, the French equivalent of the House of Representatives. They have to pick someone who can actually command a legislative majority. The prime minister then forms a cabinet, proposes legislation, and manages the government's domestic agenda. They answer tough questions in parliament and take the heat for unpopular policies. They are, essentially, the government's designated punching bag. So what if we tried to import this model to the United States? Picture this. The year is 2029, and America has just ratified the 28th Amendment, creating the office of the Prime Minister. The president is still elected every 4 years, but their role has changed. They are now primarily the head of state and commander-in-chief, responsible for foreign affairs, signing treaties, and serving as the nation's ceremonial leader. They would still hold the nuclear codes and pardon the Thanksgiving turkey, which are, let's face it, the two most important parts of the job. Their domestic power, however, would be significantly reduced. The real domestic power would shift to the Prime Minister of the United States. This person would be appointed by the president, but would have to be the leader of the majority party or coalition in the House of Representatives. The Prime Minister would then select a cabinet, introduce the budget, and be responsible for passing all domestic legislation. This would fundamentally change the power dynamics in Washington. The endless standoffs between the White House and Congress would be replaced by a system where the executive and legislative branches are intrinsically linked. If the PM can't pass laws, their government falls. The Speaker of the House would likely become the de facto Prime Minister, transforming them into the true head of government. So, is this a good idea? Would creating a Prime Minister solve America's political dysfunction? The potential upside is clear. It could break gridlock. A Prime Minister with a majority in the House could actually pass legislation, rather than having their agenda stonewalled by the opposition party for 4 straight years. The government could become more efficient and responsive. Cohabitation, while messy, could also force bipartisan compromise, or risk total paralysis and public anger. However, the downsides are, to put it mildly, terrifying. First, possible greater instability. A revolving door of prime ministers if the majority is slim and fractious. Imagine Italy, but with more guns and fewer Vespas. A vote of no confidence could topple a government overnight. Who would the public blame when things go wrong? The president? The prime minister? The system lets each side point fingers, making accountability murkier. Consider American political culture. The U.S. is built around a single, powerful, elected executive. Voters are used to picking their person for the top job. Would they accept a leader they didn't directly vote for? It would clash with separation of powers. Fusing branches might feel profoundly un-American, like ketchup on a Chicago hot dog. Ultimately, Semi-presidential is an interesting thought experiment, not a panacea. It's a fascinating idea, but America's problems likely require a much more fundamental repair job.